Objects I make are an excuse for philosophy. At the beginning, the material of choice was stone, so we brought a kind of irrelevance to the material. We started exploring other things. For me, the basket is an issue, and I think given time, I should sit down, put everything I know into one file and publish something like a book. At first, my approach was more like I followed them, yeah. But now, because I've spent probably 8 weeks real time in Hwati Valley, I've discovered, yeah, there's other possibilities. And now I'm brave enough to create work which has little to do with weaving, but the actual material, which is bamboo. And the bamboo from Hwati is unique to the area. That for me is another starting point. We are scientists by nature because we're exploring stuff. What I'm trying to do is catalyze a revolution where people rediscover what they're doing because they're working by rote. The patterns are known, like the Tonga baskets and stuff like that. So now, what I would like to see, like the woman did in Binga. She used patterns, she created concrete images and stuff like that. But I'm more interested in the abstract essence of things, because if you coil bamboo, you arrive at somewhere. The spiral becomes an important element in your creativity. If you work in Binga, pattern becomes very important, like the piece there. It's an attempt to merge Binga and Hwati Valley. Well, I work with 2 guys, and we are developing a kind of theory which you call situationism. Situationism is about something close to art povera, where we can create art with just about anything. And we also realize Zimbabwe used to be popular for the Shona sculpture, but now nothing is certain. Yeah, so we would like to come up with products which actually can support a studio. Our activity falls under the umbrella GIZHA looms. We're talking of an heirloom. We're not expecting that every day a person takes the bag outdoors. It's an identity, yeah, something which we hope can be passed to 3, 4, 5 generations. So what we would like is an idea that black people take pride in what they have. The rest of the world has heirlooms like gold rings, stuff like that. We just want to create very ethnographic the stuff for a fee.
Yes.
But something lasting, something which tells about who we are. Yeah, what we have realized in the passage of time is that initially we're a European-based clientele.
Right.
Now, I'm trying to forge for indigenous people to collect artworks. And we have, for example, Mr. Banga is collecting, he's a lecturer at Harare Poly, where I'm a resident artist. And we have Dr. Guramatunu, he's a collector of note. We had Ozaya Mapondera, also another collector of note. So the important thing is for us to create an indigenous base, because if you're going to look for Van Gogh works, you go to Amsterdam, you will find them. If you're going to look for Rembrandt, you will find them there. If you're going to look for Henry Moore, you go to London, they're there. Yeah. And I think this is our Achilles heel. Culture at some point becomes static, and I am challenging that. I want to see more movement, more new ideas out of nothing. One artist I like is Jerry Dixon. He talks about ex nihilo, out of nothing. See, you can express yourself using things out of nothing and come up with new ideas. I'm basically looking at a kind of revolution wherein ordinary things become extraordinary. We live once. Yeah. So every time you touch something and you have an artistic inclination, you encode certain things about what you're observing, what is happening around you, and stuff like that. Every bag we have made is different from the other, and every piece of jewelry we have made is different from the other. Sometimes we supply people like Wap Masike with our jewelry, and it's unique. It's her on the international stage wearing what we made. My grandmother was a potter. So one day I was in Austria working in a studio of potters. They'd invited me to work because I could not find anywhere to work, and there was an impossible character. The design element is also very important to my practice because we have been defined. We wear trousers, we wear Western attire. Yeah, I would like to see us redefining ourselves. When you fire pottery, what happens in there is chemistry.
Yeah, so I'm Jimmy Saruchera, director of the Cuba Creative Hub and Gallery. The idea of the Creative Hub is really to create and to make from here, from Zimbabwe, from Africa. Art is life. It's a sign of the time that we are living in right now. It's a message to generations that will come. When we look at the art, they'll see an expression of a time. So for me, it's art is life and it's time. The job of art is to speak, speak to people across financial levels, across individual and societal positional levels. When you see a good exhibition has all sorts of people in it. It's got politicians, it's got street vendors, it's got artists, it's got different people. Every great society often is recognized by the art that comes from there. Every great period of history is marked by art. Think of the Renaissance. The most visible and memorable manifestation of the Renaissance is actually through art. And because Africa for a long time has lagged behind other continents, both economically, socially, and in other aspects, you'll find that the value that's placed on its art also similarly lagged. But it's not a surprise that, as you're seeing a corresponding rise in the momentum of Africa, you're also seeing a rise in terms of the respect and recognition that art and African artists are getting. And I think art and technology coming together, it's not so much about those two things. It's actually about the people and how technology, for example, accelerates how easy it is for people to get access to a particular piece of art or a piece of work or a product. But it's also about how technology impacts the experience and the visibility of the art. So if you've got a large-scale projection mapping on a building, in one fell swoop, a nice piece of work that maybe would have been confined to just a gallery that maybe a few hundred people would have seen now is automatically seen by thousands or tens of thousands of people. So I think technology's role really is to magnify. That's what it does. It magnifies and it amplifies the impact that art can have. Yeah, I think it's already starting to happen. I know the guys at Jelele, they had a video event that sort of combined exhibition and video and projection as well. The National Gallery a couple of years back did some projection work during IFA a couple of years ago. It's I think it's happening, but it's not happening. It's not happening enough. And I think there's a lot to be said about the technology that's out there. There's actually a lot of technology that's out there. It doesn't always have to be stuff that is on the extreme end of the spectrum in terms of really expensive equipment or high spec software, etc. It also can come down to very basic technology that we're using on an everyday basis, and how that's brought together as part of an experience. So even things like SMS messages and text messages, and how that then integrates with a running live exhibition. So it's really about thinking broadly about the role of technology as an amplifier. But really, your starting point is the art, and then looking at where it actually makes sense to integrate technology. So it's not integrating or bringing the two for the sake of it, but you're bringing it together for experience and amplification. Yes. The Umoji exhibition was a recognition of the fact that in Zimbabwe and more broadly in Africa, we've got the largest proportion of people who are under 35. The means of communication that most of them use is the mobile device. So the Umoji exhibition was looking at how people express themselves on those devices, and visual communication on mobile devices is very powerful, it's very useful, but if you look at the range of expression that's available it's actually quite limited. Of course, you have a lot of emoticons that are based on on a smiley face. But when you think about, say, in the case of Shona, and a lot of the main expressions that we use, let's say, for example, kuombera or rasa musque, what you'll find is you're not actually referencing the face at all. So there's actually a huge gap in terms of the range of expression that's available on mobile devices, and it's actually more important than expression, because when people communicate and they express themselves to each other, they're also sharing ideas. So we're probably only exploring about 5 to 10% of all the different expressions that people can share with each other on mobile devices. So the emoji exhibition was about creating the original Shona emoji. Emoji, the Japanese word for the visual icons you find on mobile devices, but then we put the U so that it's emoji at the beginning, with a play on words of umoja or unities, to say that, okay, this is an African thing that we're doing. Okay, so provenance is, I think it's an important source of value, because when you understand the journey that whether it's a piece of artwork or even a person has had, that has an impact on what's the value and the perception of that. I think provenance it's bigger than just provenance in the context of art, to know, this artwork, where did it come from, where has it been, etc. It actually goes to the core of our history. A lot of things were passed down through oral tradition, but some time back, an uncle of mine showed me this spear, and this spear has been in my family since even the 1700s, and that was a real life example of provenance, because he was able to tell me who had the spear before him and who had it before that. So you had a real life example of provenance in place. So the value that I then now put on that spear, if somebody came to me and said, "Oh, can I give you $20 for that spear?" It's impossible, because the value, the provenance is there. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done, a lot more that should be done, to ensure that there is far more rigorous provenance that's applied to our key assets of our heritage.
My name is Masimba Hwati. I'm a visual artist living and working in Zimbabwe, in Highfield, in the ghetto, one of the oldest suburbs in Harare. I remember that we would, at break time, would call out to our mother, "Mandi great chingwa ni mazai," and that's how close the school was. So my education was there in Highfield, and then from there I went to boarding school in Mondoro, where I spent 4 years there. I got my O-level, and then came back to Highfield to do my A-level. I've got the memory of the ghetto in me, and from there, I then went to Arepoli to do my training in fine art. So that has been my formal education. I went to school just close to that a police camp. You know, it was just divided by a fence. I've been to North America, I've been to France. What I can say is we have very strong cultural roots that connect us in Muatiedu, and we have got we put our environment in our art. The colors that you see in Zimbabwe, you see them in the artwork. You see the browns, the red, the yellow, the warm colors, they are there, you know. And conceptually, it is we've had hardships, our own hardships, and the artists have interpreted those hardships into sound content, sound concepts, you know. So we are not doing bad in terms of content and other stuff. We need to learn things like administration and the other para creative side of art is where I would say that we still need to push there, but I think we're getting there. This work is an invention, a combination of the conventional guitar and the mbira, which is a traditional Zimbabwean instrument. This is the first of its kind. It's a prototype. So I'm developing it. It can play, but I'm developing it to become more simpler, you know. But I'm looking at combining the urban and the traditional, the modern and the ancient into one thing.
What I see in what you've done is to really anchor a lot of people in saying that, for example, the traditional mbira instrument, 800, 900 years old of tradition and civilization of an instrument, smelting metal, wood, notes, and so forth. But you're now saying you can keep that tradition of music, but what if you do two instruments at the same time? You're not throwing away the mbira, but you're exploring how the mbira can evolve. You can still keep classical mbira in its purest form, but you're proposing a whole new way of looking at the musical instrument.
I use a variety of media in my work. There has been other platforms for African art to be seen, you know, which are like Biennales and the other festivals that we have, which I think are fine as a starting point, you know. But the challenge that we have now is to create our own platforms. Of late, I've been using street signs, and I've been drawing on those street signs and doing graffiti and all sorts of things. I've always been drawing for a very long time. And what I soon discovered is that drawing is like an instant art form. It is like instant coffee. You put it there, straight, it gets to the people, it gets the job done. So this is another way to communicate directly to people, you know, because people find it more simpler to decipher a drawing than to decipher an object sometimes, I think, you know. And I think the message is more clearer when you are drawing. Street signs are interesting because they communicate to you regardless of your political affiliation. If it's stop, you stop. Unless you are the president, you know. So they are instant, they are strong, they are in your face, you know. So I'm taking advantage of the nature of street signs and then imposing my message on top. You know, street signs they are a symbol of order. They are a symbol of something that you can't ignore, something that you have to deal with. You've got to deal with it. It's in your face, you know. So it's like I'm jumping on that wave, you know. And I know I'm not the first artist to use street signs, but I'm jumping in that wave and infusing my message onto the street signs. So it's also a way of getting closer to the people or getting art closer to the people.
But my aim has always been the innovative, the creative. And thank God it has continued. I mean, but now we are breaking again into new ground, like Masimba, working in a 3-dimension, which I find extremely, extremely exciting, because there's another message in there. And in particular with his work, is that he has broken all barriers. He is working with the tradition and yet the contemporary. Now try and put this across to people, or even to the so-called art connoisseurs. No ways. They cannot see this incredible essence.
This is my work. It's called Urban Totems. So I'm exploring the idea of totems as a cultural thing and also as an economical thing or as a political thing. In Pan-African tradition, totems they could be animals that you hold sacred in your clan or in your village. You are identified with those animals, and there are rights concerning those animals that you can't kill them, you can't eat them. You know, so in the ancient days, our ancestors used totems also as an ecological check and balance system. For instance, if my totem is zebra, so the place where my ancestors come from, there are a lot of zebras because they are not allowed to kill them or to eat them. So you see, it was an economic check and balance system. But it was also a way of identification, identifying a clan, identifying Dzinzarano, Botunovakupi, Mwera Shumba, Mwera Moyo, that kind of thing, you know. But in the modern times now, people have forgotten those totems. They are not very important anymore. But people have got new totems now. You see, if you look at this work, you see urban icons, urban symbols like WhatsApp, Facebook, Walt Disney, Arsenal, Google, Lion Matches, Virgin, Coca-Cola. Common brands which have been part of our growing up, part of our culture, you know. So, in other words, these are the new totems. People are identifying more with these brands than with their totems, you see. So, there's also the idea of consumerism in Africa, you know. So I'm looking at how Africa is the receiving end of products from all over the world, how Africa is the biggest market of some of these brands.
Wow.